showed up at the post.
Do you know, Rachelle, are you guys expecting Lorian Scott or Sherman Boyd?
Get a message from Lori.
No, I don't.
I thought that Scott was out of town.
You guys got one? Are you planning to call to order? No, we got one more call.
I doubt it. You feed them, they'll stay.
Not that kind of Indian.
I don't use it either, because usually I'm 50 minutes early here.
Well, I'm not sure if it's through my questionnaire, but you'll make sure you have a working night. Hey, good evening, everybody. It is 5 o'clock and we are going to get started. Just a quick housekeeping. The microphones are hooked up for the speakers, and we do ask that when you are speaking to use the microphone, do not grab them by the neck part. If you're moving the mic close to you, please grab them by the base and move them however you need to make sure everyone can hear you, and especially our note taker. And the meeting is also being broadcast. So we just ask that if you are speaking, other than maybe invocation, to please use the microphones. And there are some refreshments and beverages on the counter for everyone joining us this evening. Please help yourself. You ready, Steph? Yep. You ready, Brenda?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to call the Special Council and Housing Board joint meeting to order Thursday, August 13th, 2026 at 5 o'clock p.m. at the Wheel of Rainier Cultural Center. Could we have roll call, please?
Nicole Boyd,
Here.
Misty Nordine, Lord Gordon,
Here.
Haskins here, Dave Grant, Don Peterson,
Here.
Shania Murphy,
Here.
Nicole Brown,
Here.
Ned Ford.
I'll call the special meeting of the Housing Authority Board to order, not the roll call, please.
Stephen Boyd,
Right?
Mark Duffy,
Here.
Larry Darrett,
Here.
Chris Boyd, Dan Duffy,
Here.
Scott Batten, and Lori Butterfield.
We have Mr. Jason Slender, who is going to offer some invocation and some words for our meeting tonight to start us off in a good way. Offer them some same on. Thank you for your time and generosity, Jay.
Krida Shamani Janishana Bedo, Givenoi Madrido, Migama Wayne, Ingili, our Sema, Garago, Che Ogama, Quema, Garago, Daneda, Dizata, Rosanama, Sonogo, Nindash, Manu Nudin, Indigenous cars, Ju Nude, Motawasa, Gani, and Nujuba, Nungo Sago, Wayne, Numia Dasho, Garago, Damascrobic Kangma, in Ghana and Masonogo. Mino ada shigo when the show upane. Nimigo chui ana ne kaju mani do. The kina mani do ya for marking. Mino ada shigo be show ma ga go pichu coming. Asian card. Mino ada shigo when the show ga go na be kang mani do na day. Mino ada shigo sonong yo HPG shigo ga go giz step ka giz sama. Wa also beji ka omani do when the bourgeois. Meanwhile, the sugar or common son might have been good in a Mino ada shigo ga go ni ga chiwe ni ma. O du shimani. E chiwe ni ma ga go. Ga kinege go ga o jitu juba ni kana e shine kade. Mino ada shigo ni ga bi no kea. Ga ga ge mino wana go su ni e shine kade. Mino ada shigo sono no wenda animak. Wa kabi tangi go mani do du king. Mino ada shigo iwede. Wabano, Jauno, Ningabiano, Nago, Gaye, Giiwedan, Kea. Mino I Shigo Sonomu of Peneguna, Gago Ingichi I Amanane, Ejana Seminane, Gago, Gay Guy on a Tujik, on a Tansujik, Mino I Shigo Ayakosanajin, Mino I Shigo Akoseva Gamaguma, Gago Mizo and Shinabe walking. Mino I Shigo Gay Gitma Gago. Peneguna, Gakina, Ugichida, Mino Ada Shigo Jamaga and Sheep Ma, Mino Ada Shigo, Ganoin Jigasu Jigma, Gaigo, Gakina, Uya, Omasan, Mino Ada Shigo, Usa, Penega, Abanuji, Sma, Mino Ada Shigo, Aya Ansag Ma, Gaigo, Winnie, Osa, Abajituna, Waya Osa, get it, Melanan, get the shit drawn and on, get Kinnego, Gakin, Gazeta, Shinabe. Mino ada shigo sonongo mi o, gago did the code in ma, gago o twig in ma sonongo. Mino ada shigo we win, gago o shi wigi ma o wigi wami ma, Mino ada shigo we win, osa. Yo osa gago, nimikana ma, gago we win, gasho osa, gago o wigi wami. Mino ada shigo de gago si jig ma, gago we win, wigi ma jig ma, gago sonongo mi o. Mino ada shigo yosa wadi kudari ma ga go miga. Mino yosa ga go ingichi ala amna ma ga go we oshige an ma ga go we wami ma ga go indaya. Mino ada shigo ge git ma ga go yosa ga go ogima wadi si wadi ma ga go kina ge go yosa. Mino ada shigo we like a good Jeminan Sonogum that I was going to do. Do we do Kawawa de Maga? I go to Shun the Mawa de Mu. Mino Ada Shigo, way when it does show, I go Nidan. Mino Ada Shigo, I go Gishman Dashuia. Maj Gishman, you also, way when you also, I go Mam Gimana and Maga, I go way when it. Why you supposed to do the Maga? I go, you also, I go, Kinigego, Kikonan. Migo Mamane ko an wewe turan Niwi Jagana Shim Bungi. So good evening everybody. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jason Schlunger. I'm the beloved husband of Alana Babino, so I want to share that much real quick. Keep that out of the way. But I was asked to give an invocation here, help you guys out, take care, ask the money to take pity on us, on all of you. This meeting is very important as you all work together to decide and make those decisions that are important, especially in regard to where we're gonna live. We're fortunate to have, this community is fortunate to have 40 new housing units that are going to be implemented and utilized in this community. So we ask the money to look upon us as you all work together to figure out those things, to look forward into the future so that those places will be utilized in a good way to take care of our elders, take care of our children, and take care of our families. So we have a safe place to live and to enjoy this beautiful place here on the Squabbie Common. So I know that those decisions and those things are difficult. Being a former council member myself, I know those decisions are difficult. And so we continue to just usher patience and understanding and utilizing these ways that we've been given to look at each other in a good way as relatives and thinking about those things that will help us now and into the future. So with this tobacco, I offer this tobacco to the money due, to all the spirits in all those directions and all those ways. And I'll say this, to go money due. There's only one creator that created everything. And so whatever way you pray wherever way that you extend those thoughts, I appreciate you helping me with this petition here tonight, so be good. Thank you.
You guys on the same agenda, Stephen? Okay, all right, so again, good evening and thank you everybody. Thank you to our housing board and housing staff who were able to join the majority of the governing body tonight. There are currently only 8 of us, as we all know. We have a special election on Saturday to fill the 9th member of the governing body, and Vice Chairwoman also sends her regards. She's been able to be here, but she has been vastly updated and has been involved in all of this discussion since coming into office, and we're all working really hard to get the new housing units built and also have some property management in place and also meet the needs and hear all of the wishes from everybody along the way. And so we are not expecting action tonight as a result of this meeting. This meeting is to help inform everyone to get us to that next stage of action. And so on our agenda this evening, Planning Administrator Doug Jennings is going to give an update on the 2 major construction. And then Nissia and Rachelle, executives from the Housing Authority, are going to share some proposed operating budgets, which include the expenses and a discussion on proposed rent structure and some other factors that have been discussed and need some further input. And then the legal department is here to go over some of the points thus far on the proposed property management agreement. This meeting is open. We do not have community comment on the agenda. However, I do see some community members here and want to make sure that if there is community comment, that your input is all welcome and maybe could be provided to the Housing Authority or the Secretary directly, but we did not provide that space in the agenda. Probably our mistake, but it's great to see community members here. That's incredible. And the meeting is also being broadcast, so it's being recorded so that the community is aware of the discussion taking place and can also give their feedback and input at any time as we finalize this stuff. So everyone has a copy of the materials, and we will get started. Come on, Dina.
I'm all shy because I got my weekend on my shirt.
Oh yeah, we had our office today.
Everybody should have received an update in the packet. If you don't have one, I brought a couple extra copies. But I forgot my readers, so I apologize already. We'll start with the elder apartments, to which we still need a better name than elder apartments. The ones across the highway here. So the updates right now, the Maple Building, the Cedar Building. So the Cedar Building is a building that's towards the hill. The Maple Building is the first building off of Aiken. I put that on here just so everybody can kind of reference Maple Building's apartments 1 through 12. Cedar is building or apartments 13 through 24. What separates them is the ceilings. One's maple, one's cedar. You'll know that when you go in there and smell it. No. It's kind of hard getting to it right now because of the Aiken Road project. One thing I did not put in here, we did change contractors midstream due to poor quality and workmanship, which delayed this project. The apartments are done. They're beautiful, they're great inside, but you can see the outside. It's the pavement, it's parking lots, it's a road. So we changed contractors for that. And they're clipping along. They expect to have curbs down next week and blacktop the first week of September. Those buildings, I did put a little information in there. Each building has a gathering space for the kitchen, inside storage space for each apartment, attached garages for each apartment. They're fully sprinkled, so fire protected. Shared courtyard with a large gazebo. I've been watering that for the last 2 months, trying to get some grass before people move in. It is so dry, so we're continuing to do that. We planted a plethora of native trees, fruit trees too. Shared garden beds are in the courtyard, and then paved walking path is being worked on Aiken Road that'll connect to the clinic walking path. So the accomplishments we've had, the buildings are finished, courtyard is planted, but the work in progress, we have a large gazebo that will go on the cement pad that's in between the buildings. That was ordered yesterday. Should be here before we open. The parking lot curbs are being poured, I said that. Blacktop's coming, Aiken Road's coming. Signage, currently working on that. We want something out front that identifies the apartment units. And then we also want to label Maple and Cedar buildings with the appropriate numbers on the garages.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I'm not to assume, I guess, that those are going to be named in Giiwedan, those buildings, not Maple and Cedar, correct?
For the only reason why I put Maple and Cedar on there for right now is utilities. As far as what goes on the outside of the building, none of that's been even discussed yet. We're just finding a contractor for that. On the inside, you'll notice the Maple and Cedar room numbers are just pictures of the trees. So the Cedar building has cedar trees, Maple building has maple trees. We're working, the inside pictures. Jim Peacock. We're reaching out to some community members to help furnish the inside of that building. So things like that are addressed. And then the cameras. All the wires are there, we just got to install a camera system. We have cameras in just a few common areas for security purposes. I did put on there occupy mid-September. Like I said, the units are done. There's such a big step up to the concrete right now without that pavement there that it's going to be difficult to get into the buildings. So there may be an opportunity if housing wants to get people in there earlier, that may happen earlier than mid-September. Any questions on elderly?
Utilities, are they wired for telephone and all that stuff?
Yes.
They just plug them in.
There is no telephone service to the building yet. It's got to be requested, yes.
Can you push the button? Can you push that button
No.
on the right?
Utilities, I just wonder if the phone and the television and the internet's all there.
Everything in the building is there. So, our fiber is there currently. Telephone service, Brightspeed was out there today, but they're not into our building yet. That's got to come upon a customer request. They won't do it if I ask. Yep. All the infrastructure is there for it. Good question.
I guess what I take from this is the fact that we're on the fast track right now, and we'll be looking for our community to start sending in some applications as soon as we open the doors for applications to be accepted, because that's a fast turnaround to try to get people in there.
Thought that was already going on.
We already, that's already there.
I'm just wondering, I'm sorry, behind the time a little bit. Okay.
And every unit has laundry in it also. Every unit has its own washer and dryer in it.
So will there be a point in time where potential tenants would
that'd be an excellent idea. I would probably pick Fridays or hopefully after like 4:30 when they're done. These guys are probably still working right now on that road, but it gets pretty congested down there. I'm not opposed to that at all. And I'd even stay if people want to go and walk through it, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you didn't holler at her for not pushing her button?
Can you turn the mic on?
I think we should though make sure that somebody is with them, whoever's taking the tour, just so everything gets locked back up. And they can't get in because it's locked, so. It's
Are
somebody.
you guys working every day? Do they work on weekends?
Yeah, they do.
Sure, they don't work on a Sunday. So we could plan around, get some people.
Yeah, and they don't have access to the buildings, the people there now, so they're just outside people.
Right? They ain't working every day, quit lying to me, though.
Giiwedan Apartments.
Any other questions on the elder apartments construction? We're just on construction right now, so.
Are you open just construction for some reason?
We can figure that out. We don't need to figure that out right now. We can figure that out after. I think it's a great idea. We can figure it out. Any other questions on the construction side for the elder apartments?
I have one.
Yeah, Paul?
My question is, people are questioning, there's no pictures, there's nothing what these apartments look like out there. So, like, my parents who are interested, they have not, I mean, hard for people to come and say, yes, I want to do this, but they don't even have a clue what the place looks like.
Yeah, that was Larry's comment also, is what kind of promotional information can we get out, or can we have some open houses, or have some walkthroughs, scheduled walkthroughs? And Doug's open to, facilitating that. While we're on construction, it is a little complicated, but we can figure it out. I think it's great to know that people are that level of, wanting to see the insides, and we can figure that out for sure.
Okay.
We just wanna make sure it's safe for
Yeah.
everyone.
The question though, the thing is, I mean, if it's mid-September move-in, we're already mid-August.
We recognize the timeline, we agree.
Yeah, okay.
We wish they would have been done already, that we didn't run into the issue that we did with the subcontractor on the paving. And we know that there's some other feedback from folks that use Aiken Road, regularly, who are also feeling the burden of that. But Doug's doing the best he can to figure it out as quick as possible. And the general contractor, Borton, they've been supportive. They have done everything that we've asked to try to get that resolved as quick as possible. But it's also the middle of the construction season, and we're trying to change a subcontractor, and so it just threw things off a little bit. But we definitely want to make sure people can see the spaces. Construction.
I think, getting pictures of the building and posting on Facebook page or wherever would be faster than tours. So,
Didn't you send us layouts too of what they look like, that maybe,
that would be
yeah.
helpful for a lot of people, I'm sure.
that maybe I could send you?
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just looking through those today, so it's kind of got the layout of
Yeah.
the different types, yeah.
I guess I saw the layouts, and I guess there was a big concern is the bedrooms. They're all one bedroom, but the bedroom is so small that you could not get a queen bed in that bedroom.
Yeah, and it's hard, it's hard to tell by, yeah.
Right,
well,
and then
I
you're
get
looking
that.
at, elder couples wanting to live in their one bedroom, but the bedroom's
So-
big.
hard of hearing, and I'm gonna guarantee nobody on the web is hearing any of this talk back there. That's
Yeah,
right.
and we'll make sure that all the questions you have, if you have questions, this is just meant to be updates.
Okay.
So that if there are not updates shared on some of the things like you're asking about, then make sure to get those to us so that we can share the updates out. Like people wanna know about the size, they wanna know about the layout, they wanna see pictures, they wanna get tours, they wanna get materials out quick. We will get that moving. And if you're on the list with the housing as a potential, then definitely those people should get the information too. Anything else on the construction for the elder apartments?
Just a comment on, back a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Fond du Lac opened up an elderly unit and stuff. I just wonder if we're gonna do the same thing and invite the press in and stuff like that, so we can let them know that we're doing the same thing. And we know that it's a good place too.
Yeah, we'll have quite a few
Ribbon cuttings.
ribbon cutting grand openings coming up here shortly, so.
Invite the press in.
Absolutely. Channel 6.
Yep.
All right, Giiwedan. So, again, to keep the buildings separate, the two new roads next to Giiwedan are red pine and black spruce, both native trees here. We're looking at the first building you come into off of Blueberry being red pine, apartments 1 through 8. The second building being black spruce, 9 through 16. They're efficient, smaller apartments, 1 and 2 bedroom. And they're fully sprinkler buildings. We've accomplished the exact opposite of the elder. We got all the outside stuff done, parking lot, curb, everything. But the interior is about 90% finished.
Where the hell are the boys?
Good question. They were supposed to be in Tuesday, then today, now tomorrow. So they're supposed to be here tomorrow.
How long have they been off?
Off.
There isn't any.
Never been off yet? Well, I know, but I mean, I have to go out there every day and see.
It's been since it's winter. There's no doors in the interior or exterior.
Make doors on that.
Some of the trees could have made doors that we took down to make the roads.
Well, I guess the point of what I'm hearing is, maybe the answer is, when are they expected to be done? When is the contract for the contractor to get them done?
Yeah.
Are they online, or are they asking for more time? I know
Maybe it's
there's issues, but when are they supposed to be done?
The initial move-in date was April,
Oh, okay,
and then May,
sorry.
and then June,
Yeah.
and then July. They're being penalized daily for that job. So it's almost there. We just gotta get them over the hump here. So kitchen cabinets went in, they're not fully complete, but they're in. Plumbing fixtures are not set. All the doors, alarm systems, cameras, and I made them redo the grass already once, and they're gonna have to do it again. I think they're growing potatoes there, not grass.
See.
Yeah, bad topsoil too. They are receptive. I've been emailing them daily. They've been through several project managers on that site. So I'm expecting a occupancy of mid-September on that also. They're telling me next week, but I don't believe them, so we'll see. I put Giiwedan houses on there. You want to talk anything about
questions on the construction, for the Giiwedan apartments?
No, if I may, I guess, also, we understand that the way, you know, we see it every day with the apartments and the fact that once had 50 people working on the project, and on site there, down to one truck and maybe one person wandering around. So it's going to probably full of crews. I was more interested in the bottom portion of the update there that says the 6 to 7 manufactured homes. A little bit, has nothing to do, I'm just kind of curious on what that means. So it's within that area, correct? Where the roads are right now?
So
Are they rentals, are they ownership, people can buy them? It's just unclear.
the Giiwedan development was developed in 2 phases. One was the apartment, and then 2 was the surrounding community around the apartment. The Black Spruce, Red Pine, and JD Drive, U Drive, I guess you call it. That phase 2 was meant to create building opportunities for people that want to be homeowners, where infrastructure was to the site, and all they had to do was put their house there. So the tribe did do all the infrastructure. We're in the middle of doing the gas and electric through there now. So to answer your question, the houses that were approved by council to order are for rental and for home buyers. They're not designated 5 for rental and 3 for home buyers yet. I think we still have some things to work through on that. They will be here by November. Whether or not they'll be ready to move in, probably November, December.
Sure.
So those houses will be fully paid for, so they're, I believe housing is gonna take care of the rental on those.
It's on the proposal.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because I was just thinking there were rental settings, you know, the rental sets that we're just gonna manage. They're available to purchase if a member wants to purchase that outright. Is that what you guys are saying? Is housing, or excuse me, the tribe footed and fronted and bought these manufactured homes, and they're gonna be available just to buy outright by a member if they want to?
I think the tribe would prefer that myself, instead of being in the rental business.
I agree. I probably, once you got paid off one, I probably won't purchase another one, and just keep doing it.
And that's why we built out 30 sites.
Okay.
So there is room for expansion in there, and I hope that it can keep going.
Any other questions on the construction side? Construction updates?
I'm gonna do just a comment. Just for our audience who's listening, this delay that we had has nothing to do with contracts on the tribe side. It's all about the deliverables on the person who got the contract in the first place, and the hiccups that they ran into in midstream changing contracts. I think that's good for our community to know, because they look at that and say, how come it's taking so long? I've seen this other project get through on a different community, and it happened quite fast. It's no fault of the tribes, it's the fault of our contractors not putting enough manpower on them, and or doing jobs that were not satisfactory, so we had to look for more workers. So I'm glad to hear that, and our community needs to hear that.
Is the same contractor working on the project that started the project?
What project?
The one on Government Road, Blueberry.
Yes,
It is.
not the same subs.
I mean, we have history with those people. I just wonder what it's going to sound.
It's very, very sour right now.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, you deal with
I
that.
think that's unfair, because we have the police department with the same general.
Yeah, I'm talking project only.
Okay.
The problem is with general contractors, when they get behind, they don't perform the work themselves, they have subs. And they get behind, it affects every sub. And that's what they fell into, so.
It's their responsibility.
Yep.
All right, any other questions, construction questions? Construction project questions for Deb? All right, ladies, which one would you like to start with, Giiwedan or Elder project? We are going to start with the elderly budget, and it's the documents that look like this and the one that has the least columns. Got it. Ready?
So
If you gotta push the button and you gotta move the mic close.
we had met and discussed different variations of the rent.
You gotta look closer. You can't hear me.
Is that better?
Dylan,
Is that better?
can you turn her up?
So one of the discussions on the initial budget was it was inflated, and we reviewed areas of affordability. I think, the board wants to ensure that the affordability is there. However, a part of the concern is, management of that budget with enough income to cover the expenses. We looked at the variation of 450, 500, and different variations of the management fee, and what would be the most affordable for, our elders. So the original budget was at 172, and then the next tier went to 144, and the next tier to 129. So the question and conversation to the tribal council and to the board is what would be acceptable from both sides on these budgets for affordability purposes. And from my perspective, on my recommendation, I don't recommend that we run in the red. That would not be good for business, and the risk doubles for, our ability to continue to pay our expenses on time if we start the first month in the hole and then continue down that path depending on, how many people we can get into these units. So I just wanna, from my perspective, the variation of the bottom line, with no management fee and then with management fees, of if the council and the board agree on if there's gonna be a management fee, how that's gonna be managed to support operations. And in a capital, account, or, one thing I wanted to ask the council and the board is, there's a variation of retained earnings, and I don't see your CFO here, but the question would be is, if you wanted to keep any of that profit in a retained earnings account to, accrue dividends, then over time, the tribe can decide what to do with that, whether that's per cap or, in other areas of distribution for capital expenses. Because just holding on to the money or, going into this management contract, that language has to support operationally. And then also on, the policy piece,
So, I'm playing catch up.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, you said we have 12 that have to go under the HUD guidelines? Explain to me why that is.
Because they're HUD houses.
So, this is what was agreed on previously, was 12 units that were HUD houses and 12 units that were our funded houses. So if they're funded by HUD, we have to follow NAHASDA. We're required under federal law to follow specific protocols under those regs. So those ones, we have to make sure that the low income are getting preference according to that list that we have and according to their income.
Thank you, understand that HUD funding paid for half of them, ARP funding paid for the other half, so we're stuck with the HUD rules on half, and the other half, we have been paid through ARPA, and we can do what we need to do to make sure things balance out, which may create some issues in the long run, but at least I understand it.
I think once we get to the management agreement, that's where we're going to have to look at the policies on where we're going to be enforcing what's required under this agreement.
So, in housing, I'm gonna ask some more questions. For all 12 of those, are we required to have 30%, or is that just a recommendation and a priority if we have those? If we have people in the 40, 50, 60%, after we fill what we can with the 30, we can fill it with the rest of the income levels?
It's up to 80%.
That's what I understand is.
They have to be, under 80%.
It has to be under 80%.
I believe, but I'll recheck. You could charge a flat rent, okay? But that cannot exceed that 30% of their income. Just like our tax credits, our phase 1, phase 2, how that came back at us, and now we have to, you can charge them a flat rent, but if you can't go above the 30% of their income.
I understand that, and that's where my concern is that 30%. In the other place, we had so many that had to be under that 30% or at that 30%. My question kind of is, if we don't have people at that 30%, they're all hired, that's okay?
What do you mean? Like
it has to be at 80% or below, and if there are special requests, we would have to contact HUD to see if it would be okay.
I guess I kind of...
The 30% that she's talking about is charging 30% of their rent.
Okay, it's not 30% of the main income.
No,
Gotcha.
no, it's the charge, what you're charging
Now
the
I'm
rent.
straightened out enough.
Okay, now I get what you're saying.
So for some income, it may not be a good fit. If it's a flat rate rent, for some people's income, it may not be the right fit. Because if that flat rent exceeds 30% of your income, you would not be eligible. They would not be able to determine you eligible. I was not part of the housing board previous discussions, and am aware that the original proposal we received at admin, just so people are aware, because I don't know, I've never heard it being talked about in tiers, which is fine because I could catch on real quick what Rachelle was referencing, that the original budget we received had rent at $650 and a 10% management fee, and then pretty excessive, like what Rachelle referenced as inflated expenses, or maybe just some projected expenses, or just some things that maybe could happen, and really want to recognize the work that Vinny, Nissia, Colleen, and Rachelle have done to bring the expenses to a point that they feel are reasonable and justified and manageable on their end, and also the calculations that they've done to cost share that these 24 units being added to the 220 whatever existing units really is a cost share among the whole management system that the housing authority has. And so you can see at the bottom section, the expenses are reflective of what is being proposed. That includes a management fee. That first column says 0. That there would be no management fee, whatever the management fee is in reference to, that can be talked about after. And so when we all received that, I think we were a little shocked. Because my first question back was, well, what are the existing rent structures? And how is all of that being calculated and determined? Why was the $650 proposed? None of us were really part of that discussion, and really that, I think sticker shocked us on how that was being considered affordable based on the income, because we also pulled the income of all the current renters to see like who could realistically afford that. And what was the goal? The goal was to build affordable elder housing and to try to make it as straightforward as possible. So what's included in your rent and what isn't included in your rent, and establish a flat rate rent that seemed realistic but also covered all the expenses. And so we calculated numbers. We did $400 a month because that's the current rent cap of the housing authority. There are not many single-family homes managed by the housing authority, 3-bedroom, 2-stall garage homes that pay more than $400 a month. And we are asking some of our most vulnerable and fixed income folks in our community, our elders, to pay more than a single-family renter pays at the housing authority. I find that very difficult to defend and justify to our community. And so we worked very hard to try to make a proposal that we felt is maybe even not even realistic for a lot of our community members who are on fixed incomes trying to have affordable housing. And so what is proposed there with the $450 a month rent, and that includes your water and sewer, but the renter still pays their additional utility. They still have to pay their electric, gas, and their phone, internet, and then whatever other expenses they have out of their pocket. It also includes the trash removal, your snow removal, groundskeeping. It includes an attached garage. It includes the use of the community room and all of the courtyard space. And so the discussion today is to really show you like what it looks like for somebody to pay $450 a month with 0 management fee. We still are in the negative, almost $1,000. To pay $450 a month with a 5% management fee, we're in the negative $7,600 and times 2 for the 10%. When we get to the $500 a month rent, including your water and sewer, you still have to pay your own electric, gas. We're in the black, $10,266. And $500 a month rent at 5% management fee, we're still in the black. We're still in the positive, $2,900. When you get to the $500 a month rent, 10% management fee, we're in the red. So we need to look at the chart and really identify what the reality is of covering the expenses. The expenses including things like the insurance, the management, the maintenance, the capital improvements that have to be considered, and other basic things that landlords have to cover for their properties to be maintained. And so you'll see that reflected in both of these proposals, but on the elder one in particular is different because your water and sewer is included in your rent, and that is not included on the other one, which is a $71 fee per month per user.
We did include the internet in the budget in the rent.
In the rent? Okay, and the internet too, which is great, because we're trying to really negotiate a fixed rate on the internet for the apartment buildings.
If I may, just a few things. Chairwoman, thanks for that clarification. You know, just a short 2 months ago, these numbers were twice what we're looking at now. You know, when we seen the original budget for our elder apartments, I was thinking to myself, there's no way none of my elders within this community is gonna be able to afford to live in them buildings. Just for example, I'll just say a elder on SSI, and that's all they got is SSI. Maybe $1,000 a month, and the rent was initially looked at and budgeted out at $750 or $650 you mentioned. It's like, there's no way. These units will sit vacant because my elders can't afford to live in them. And I see they have come down quite a bit, you know, in terms of being able to make them more affordable. And I think we may get there where we'll get those completely occupied, because part of what we're looking at on the housing side is if they sit vacant, there's carrying costs as a management. So we have to ensure that those units are full. Those 24 units are full at all times. And the only way we can do that is having a reasonable rent cost for our elders. So that's kind of what we've been batting around for 2 months now.
And I think the concept of the way you explain that about being in the black and being in the red, even when we tried to get these houses down to a reasonable, affordable rate, the overall cost of our projects, just to run them, is putting the rent at that. That is no cost to recoup the cost of the actual house themselves. The scary part, and this is what I brought up in housing when we were talking about this, is who's going to be responsible for long-term maintenance, the big stuff, I'll call it. When the roof goes bad, if there's no profit built into the concept, we're going to have to look for funding sources, or the tribe's going to have to look for funding sources to replace a roof at something of that nature, probably $100,000 just for the roof on those buildings. Those are concerns that I brought up in our housing meeting as management contract. We got to be cautious, and we got to let the tribe know that these are the potential costs in the future, as I've heard before, subsidies and so forth. If we charge enough money to recoup the cost of everything there, the majority of our retired people would not be able to live there. We would have it full of 55 to 60-year-olds that are still working. There would be very few, if any, 75 on ups in there, because they would be working off of their SSI or small amounts of retirement. Around here, nobody gets retirement. It's just a thing that we live. We live to work, and that's what we do. People retire, can't afford $1,000 house payment plus all the other stuff they're accustomed to. Not around here, at least, not the people I know. But we got to do something when we're trying. But I'm very cautious about charging too much, but yet, in the same sense, charging too little, unless we know for sure that there is some way in the future we'll be able to offset some of the costs, i.e. the roof, window upgrades, some snowstorm or hail damage to the garage doors, things of those nature that you never think about. We know that during rental concepts, every so often you gotta redo the flooring and, you know, they get beat up pretty bad. So those are the questions that I brought up at the housing board, and I'm cautious and a little bit reluctant to try to get into this contract where housing is potentially liable for that. So thank you, Madam Chair, for pointing out the reds and the blacks. So all council and all housing knows that we are on a thin line here to try to make these affordable to our true elders and moving forward with these projects. It's going to be difficult.
I think once we get into the management agreement, I think there we can look at the areas that the council and the board could agree on these figures and the liabilities, because there are liabilities that we need to discuss further in detail of enforcing the policies. Part of the management agreement talks about the tribe having oversight of the maintenance and part of the procurement. So we need to understand, are we pulling the tribe's policies and enforcing what the tribe has for policies, or are we using our own procurement policies and following our own infrastructure guidelines that we have in place? The way that the contract reads, it reads more on we're following tribal policies. So if we're following tribal procurement, we need to understand what that means and how we're going to manage that wait list, because it says the tribe.
So I guess now that that information is out there, we will wait and definitely are eager to hear the feedback from our community on where we think that the landing zone needs to end up, somewhere in the $450 per month rent to the $500 a month rent to cover just the basic expenses, including the capital improvement account that would be required per the agreement. And including all of the other insurances that you're talking about for catastrophic situations. And we can come back to that. We can transition to the other one. The other one is a little bit different because it includes 1 and 2 bedroom places. Not much different, but a little bit.
So again, on the Giiwedan budget, it is similar to the elder budget. So for consideration of the council and the board of what would be the appropriate rent with the management fee. All of the costs that we reviewed on a trend basis of what has been paid in the past and what it will look like in the future, we've pulled down some of those expenses. And you can see it's almost an $80,000 difference based off of the data that Nissia pulled and Vinny pulled. They gave us actual numbers from what is paid. So it's a huge savings, and that gave the allowability to drive those costs down for the rent. So the question will be for the board and for the council on what would be appropriate rent for the 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Initially, before
Rachelle and I started on this budget, the rent was budgeted at $650 for a 1 bedroom and $750 for 2 bedrooms. Vinny, Colleen, and I and Rachelle think that the proposed budgets here all make a lot of sense and are a lot more reasonable than charging our community members $750 for a tiny little apartment, including a $400 and $500 charge. As a housing authority, we would like to see it a little higher. As community members, we want to see it as affordable as possible, with sustaining itself. All of these budgets are in the positive, so at this point, it's community input would be super helpful, and discussion between us here.
If I may, just a couple of things I'd like to break down in the thought, of course, of trying to keep them affordable. But I always don't lose sight of the fact that I'm looking at the future development. And the future development takes money. So we can't just give away anything that we could give away with the intent that no longer building nothing more, when the need's always going to be there to have more. So we have to keep that in mind also, that whatever we do retain in terms of profit is looking at the future, on future development too. So you're always trying to find that happy medium on cost, profits, guarantee I don't want loss. Like we mentioned on the Elder project, we're trying to alleviate loss because we don't know what the future holds in terms of capital improvement on buildings. So we always got to stay above water.
You know, we're running a business, okay? That's what we are. But we're running a business to the future, okay? And that takes our community to pay and go through this as we do. We are paying our rent. But at the same time, we want the younger generation to be responsible to those things. And using the housing, play that role to get that rent to where it needs to be. Okay? The only thing I didn't kind of like is that our elders may be paying a little bit more money than the younger generation to a brand new building. And I'm not seeing that in here. I mean, our elders paying, it shows they're paying a little bit more rent for a 1 bedroom when we have 2 bedrooms with 2 grown-ups with children staying in there. That means there's more money. We have to teach them to be responsible. And that's where we're at today. Then we move forward. Okay?
Can I clarify, Dan, if you're referencing in theory to the existing 220 units that the Housing Authority is managing?
No, I'm talking about the brand new buildings we're talking about.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
I think there's an ethical obligation that the board has to the rent piece and the cost factor of responsibility and culturally ensuring that the responsibility is met by the community members that are a part of this rental unit. And I don't disagree on the bottom line of a business piece. There are risk factors that have to be reviewed and liabilities. And, you know, the expectations. One of the things that I had looked at was the Chapter 19 for housing. And under subsection 6 for powers and the areas of concern of how we respond to risks. So so that responsibility that the board is talking about is, making sure that we have the ability to cover our costs, the rent and the cost for the liabilities. The budget would cover the liabilities if anything were to happen. So the risk factor under chapter 19, for just an example, would be litigation. The tribe exercises their sovereignty. That's in the management fee. However, in subsection 6, we are not granted those same privileges. So in chapter 19, section 6, we're looking at 19.6.2. The council hereby gives its irrevocable consent to allowing the authority to sue and be sued in its appropriate name upon any contract, claim, or obligation arising out of its activities under this ordinance, and hereby authorizes the authority to agree by contract to waive any immunity from suit which it might otherwise have. But the tribe shall not be liable for the debts or obligations to the authority. So we aren't extended any of that immunity. We're just sitting at risk. So if anything does come up, the government has issued an ordinance saying that we have to consent to a lawsuit. So we have no protections in that case. However, in our management agreement, it does express that the tribe exercises their sovereignty, so they're not liable to anything. So we have to manage those risks for any uncertainty. And so I'm just pointing that out because there's a liability there.
Like what? Like what? I mean, can you just enlighten us what you guys think the housing authority's risk is? Or, I'm trying to understand. I mean, I understand, I know it's written in the code, but I'm trying to just understand, I guess, better what the tribe's risk or what it is that we're trying to establish.
Most of our litigation that we have now is evictions. So that's what drives the budget in this case is the revenue piece. So if we don't have the money from the budget for the revenue, we're going to be spending legal costs for that piece. Now, if somebody wants to litigate or choose whatever path they're taking against the housing authority, we don't have those protections. We're just open to that risk and liability. So we want to follow what we're supposed to be doing according to the policies and procedures, but it opens us up to the risk as well. There's a fine line there. How do you protect yourself as a business? Normal LLCs, you get sued up to the amount that you are worth. Who knows what that looks like? And I've asked the question with some of our staff that have been at the housing authority for a while. Most of it happens through evictions, and that's what drives the revenue. I'm not saying that'll happen, but just reading through the management agreement, supporting that it's more equal, towards the housing authority and how that's favored. Just as a protection, because they want to make sure the business is taken care of. And it's our obligation to protect the tribe's assets, and that's a part of it.
I think the tribe shares the same goal of ensuring the housing authority's risk is mitigated. So I don't think that should be driving it to say it's one side or the other, that we will make sure that both parties' risk is as mitigated as possible. It is not my intention, or I think anyone at the tribe's intention, to make the housing authority take on risk. So we can work that out with the legal department, and I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts or feedback. But I don't know.
And then on the other part of the pet policy, we wanted to discuss how the council and the board feels about that and support for that in the agreement.
Does anyone have questions or comments?
I'm a good one for the pets. When we're trying to provide housing for our low-income people, and then we allow them to have a pet that costs money, vet bills, food, care, and so forth. That money should be probably encouraged to use to better their family than to better a pet, although there's a lot of emotional support with pets, I understand that. All it takes is one or two bad pets to cause damage to your units, and them costs can be quite high. I have no problem with service animals, and that stuff, and have a decent deposit for those things. But general pets, I oppose general pets in rental units.
I have to apologize, I haven't been at a housing board meeting in a couple months, but due to my own health and changes, but is it getting worse, or, I mean, we know in a day's time, something bad can happen, so is it getting worse with the animals in the housing, or is it getting better? 'Cause when I hear that, I don't know which way to take it.
No, it's not getting worse. It's a matter of preference for the council and the board of what would be allowable. So under NAHASDA, for section 504 that we discussed, for service animals, we do have a pet policy. However, we discussed chapter 15 on the ordinance that there's nothing in that regarding the service animals, which if we were to put that into our lease agreement, we would need some support of how the tribe wants us to manage that. And if the tribe doesn't want pets in the units, we just need to understand, how the board feels, and if we can come to a place where it's only service animals or pets are allowed.
History has shown, since we have the pet deposit in housing, the aspects of damage and stray dogs and stray cats up in housing have gone down immensely, so that definitely helps. But again, it just takes one pet to be run amok in the bottom of the house and pee all over the place, or poop and all this other stuff. That smell can be in that house for a long time after the person moves out. Very difficult to deal with those type of things. So again, when we're trying to get people in housing that are low rent, if it's low rent, we want to encourage them to spend their money on themselves rather than a pet if possible. And I am only one board member.
And not to go against, but it only takes one human too. And in the 10 years I've been here, I've seen more human damage than I have animal damage. So I guess yeah. There's that.
David? When you guys turn your mics on, I can see you in the queue, just so you know. So if you do want to speak next, just push the mic button.
What's your proposal on the pet deposit?
It doesn't matter, kind of.
So whether you got a dollar amount to look at or not, I'll give you an example, $1,000 deposit, it would take you $5,000 to fix a house for when a cat sprays. And my dad, I had to help him with his house, he thought it was a few hundred.
went in the thousands. Just that, I think it's gonna be a challenging slope to, implement whatever way you go. And updating that pet policy is probably a good starting place.
I will say this, that even if they pay like $300 per pet deposit.
Can you come to the mic? A mic?
Amy?
Thank you.
So I will say, even though they're paying just $300 or $500 for a pet deposit, that doesn't mean it gets them out of, if the bill comes more than that, they're still paying the remainder. That's just kind of, we're insured that much for sure, but yeah, because we can take that. Yeah, so they're still paying the full bill.
Well, we gotta remember what we're dealing with here, and what's on the table is apartment style living. This ain't single family homes for standalone where pets have a yard. No, this is communal living. So, I'm all for, Mark's direction. Do we wanna keep our new units in the best shape possible for as long as possible? Or do we wanna expose ourselves to risk? It's as simple as that.
I just have a comment. I too agree with, no pets in the new buildings and stuff like that. But I love pets and service animals, but how do you keep track of, let's say Chris pays for a pet, okay, he gets one pet. What is your policy on how many cats, how many dogs you get? So is it per policy, per pet, you pay that? And then people that are paying their pet policy all of a sudden have 6 dogs, 4 cats, and they only paid 1 pet policy. How do you keep track of that?
So are we talking about service animals or just
Service
a family,
animals
or a family dog? Because a service animal comes with a certificate. It's been trained. A dog, family dog is whatever you want it to be. So we have to distinguish that first. Are we gonna allow service animals, or are we gonna just allow the family dog? But you know, some people just think their dog is a family, so you know, it's hard to distinguish.
So it says, service animals only, and I feel the same way with Mark. Try to keep our homes in good shape as long as we can. Money is really tough to come by here. And when we're looking at HUD funds or ARPA funds, I treat them the same.
So we have a pretty good list of some potential occupants for that building, right? Do we have anybody on those lists currently that may, aside from the service pets, may want to just bring regular household pets along with them? Have they expressed that?
Yes, people want to bring pets.
Like cats and dogs, or beyond that?
So right now I only know of one. That has pets. So,
that wants to change?
that, yeah, 2, so they're already over all our other unit policy too, so. So there's only one on the list who are interested in the Giiwedan that has a couple dogs. And I'm not against the no pet thing, I'm just saying, I don't always agree. Me and Mark don't always agree when it comes to the damages. Low rent, so there's our low rent units, those are 2, you can have 2 pets. Tax credits are 1, and then, I'm trying to think now. You don't have it with you?
I don't see anything in chapter 15 of the ordinance, so we're just
It's just our policy.
It's not a chapter 15
Yeah,
issue,
just our
it's a
policy, but
housing
yeah.
issue.
So low rents are, yeah, two pets, and then tax credits are one.
They allow pets right now at the elderly apartment complex.
Yes.
And do they allow pets at the new housing, or the New Hope complex?
No, just service animals.
And what about at the sixplex
Yes.
and the fourplex? Which
Yes.
sort of are independent, they're attached, but sort of independent. Okay, so no pets allowed at the New Hope, and no pets allowed, or pets allowed at the elderly. And are there grievances about pets?
No, I mean, every so often you'll have, those are usually not in the apartment buildings. I've never had one in an apartment building. Maybe one where an elder couldn't get their dog out.
But like, are they complaining to the wardens about dogs barking, or dog waste not being cleaned up, or dangerous dog situations?
No, not to the wardens. I think I had one a few years ago that, I mean, it was a grievance, complaints to me, and it was taken care of, but, I don't know how often it is, like even like an aggressive dog. I've had to evict maybe one dog in 10 years. And yes, I evicted the dog. I had to, but, so maybe two in the 10 years that I've been here. So it's not a common thing. I mean, it's not, yeah.
Solutions for pet waste would be just getting.
We put up pet stations.
stations.
We put up pet
at
stations.
all of the locations.
When
And then having someone actually go around and check them, because if they don't get checked,
Yeah.
they're really disgusting. I will.
Yeah.
I have a one, I'll just ask this last one because I just wanted to ask it. How does housing verify where it's applicable for a service dog? How are you verifying that is a bona fide service dog? Anyone can go on the internet, honestly, and get a certificate, but it's quite a bit more formatted than that.
So up until recently, you had your service animals, which, I mean, it's official papers. They've been trained, they've been, you know.
Yeah.
Then you have your, what is it? Emotional support, yeah, emotional support, and then there's another one too. Where those ones, basically, you get something from a doctor that they, yeah, up until recently. Now, even those have to be trained and certified, or some type of certification.
That's under section 504, which
Yeah.
we discussed with Richard.
Yeah. So that has now changed.
So maybe we could look at it another way, rather than saying yes or no to a dog, let's do it on a case-by-case basis, because some people take care of their animals, some people don't. You're gonna chastise people across the board, and I may be good, and he may not be good. So don't say no, let's just wait and see how it comes up, you know.
But who's gonna be the one?
I know people out there that got a dog, you would never know they owned it. You know, so my daughter had a dog, and that dog was just wonderful, you know, and of course when she died, it moved on, but that just tells you that some people can care for their animals and make sure that things are good, and some people just don't give a damn.
But that begs the question of who's gonna be the one that decides.
The landlord decides. I mean, when you're a renter, your landlord decides if you are a good renter. That's why we are telling these guys is they need to update the policy to show us, like, how are they gonna enforce it as the new landlords? The tribe as the property owner, we care about the condition of the property significantly, and whatever rules are being proposed has to be managed and implemented and enforced by the housing authority. And so there's a lot of clarification that if we are drafting a policy that says approved service animals only, must have a deposit, must be under this weight limit, you are responsible for cleaning up your waste and you will get no warnings, like, all of that policy has to be enforceable. And so I don't want to implement a bunch of rules and ideas that the housing authority then has to walk around and enforce, especially at an apartment complex where you're going to have a lot of people's eyes, and you're going to have a lot of people who are like, that person didn't clean up their dog crap and I want you to do something about it, because they shouldn't have to enforce it. Another renter should not have to enforce their neighbor's stuff. They're gonna be coming to those guys, and these guys have to be prepared for whatever rules are implemented. And I think that's the alarming part, is I don't wanna set them up to fail. That's not the goal. The goal is that if we're gonna allow pets, there has to be an enforceable policy that is realistic, not unrealistic. And so that's been the gist of our discussion, is like, what's absolutely required by federal law and where does the limitation lie? Because a lot of people rent outside of the housing authority, just have to follow their landlord's rules. That says no pets are allowed. Well, this ain't a good fit for you then. And that's how it goes. And it's apartment complex living on top of it. It is really about not just what you desire as a renter. It's not a single family rental. There are complaints at the elderly about people who don't clean up their dog's waste. There are complaints from workers and contractors and people who mow the grass. And so, you know, it's like, I could say yes or no to pets today, and it doesn't affect me. It affects the housing authority who has to enforce the rules and maintain the property. And so I think that I like Larry's idea. However, I would probably, if I were to have to take a vote, or the board is taking a vote, I would just want to know where everyone stands on.
By the way, I don't have a dog.
You're on the list.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a dog.
I will say
You
this.
can get a fish though.
I'll give you my opinion. Either you accept the dog, pets, or you don't. I'm not gonna be the one to pick and choose, okay, you get a dog, you get a dog, you get, I won't do that. I'm not doing that. So it's either you do or you don't. I will mention one other thing. So for service animals, you can't collect a deposit. You can't collect a deposit. That doesn't mean they don't pay for damages, but you can't collect a deposit, no.
I guess I should clarify what Colleen just clarified there. That's what I meant with who's gonna be the one to decide. This person can have one and this person cannot. That's setting someone up.
Larry.
For like, yeah,
Larry's deciding.
Your idea is unfair. I think it's
Who gets a dog and who doesn't?
It's an unfair
Right.
expectation
Right.
on the landlord, on the
Yeah.
property manager.
I agree.
And New Hope right now is surviving just fine, and their units are full without pets.
Yep.
So, I think that there's, yeah.
There's a few service animals, but we don't get complaints at all.
13 years.
Just to your point on picking up dog poop, there is a new nuisance law, section 9, under chapter 15. One of the things that we had requested was support from the tribe on the ordinance for service animals. So if we do currently enforce federal law when it comes to service animals. However, we do have to do some updates in our policy to align that with what we need to do. And the request to the council is if you guys would review chapter 15 and support the housing authority on the service animal piece, because that's not in the ordinance. And then we just realign all of our policies with federal law, which we have all the language and everything, it just has to be formalized in front of the board.
So, back to no pets. Simple as that, real simple. The second part of this, again, is what was somewhat talked about, but not quite, and I want to bring this up, is following our code of laws and the aspects of evictions and stuff, we need to tighten that up. with these rental units and the ones that we have now and the new existing ones, that it doesn't take, the housing authority 6 months to a year to get somebody out of a house that isn't paying or isn't meeting their requirements in their contract to stay in that house. That is a problem we have with our regulations that we're dealing with right now in our court system. So I just want to make people aware of that has to be looked at a little bit too and tightened up. If we are on a very low budget rentals, we can't take forever to get a non-payment person out of the house.
It just goes back to chapter 19 and the ordinance on that process, on the eviction. Ultimately, the tribe has the discretion to evict, or we do according to our current policies.
Any other comment or feedback on the listed expenses on the bottom for the Giiwedan? And then you can see there are 3 categories of proposed rent, and you heard where it started from. They started here at $650 and $750. What you have before you are 3 categories: $600, $700, $500, $600, $400, $500. We could even go lower than that because you can still see on the bottom line, we're still in the black.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
You know, I'm on a fixed income, and I'm just looking at Ben over here, you know. I get Social Security, and I probably gonna get it for a little while. Ben was a fisherman. Keep in mind, he didn't get Social Security. You know, so he's living on whatever income he made while he was fishing. So when we talk about the rent for the elderly center, I'm not too concerned about the other one. But we are limited on what we can spend, you know, and if you press it too high, you're gonna press it right out. And it's simple.
I think we share a mutual goal, everybody here, that we will get the rents as low as possible on the elder apartments.
Okay.
I think that should be a mutual goal in the other apartments, unless the housing authority is looking to address rent across their 224 units. It is not fair to consider making the Giiwedan properties outside the current rent cap.
Well, I agree with you.
I disagree with Larry, because I have been pushing for rent increases in housing so that we're not working in the negatives since I've been on the board. It's a tough thing to do. We have had a couple of small increases, and we're supposed to be getting some slight increases in a few more units relatively soon if we haven't already. So if you got my vote here, I would not vote for something that is less than what the elderly is, and that's the 400 to 500 range. I would be in the middle of the 500 and 600 range for these units and see what happens. With some caveats that we relook at this in 3 to 5 years to see where that is. I am also always encouraged that after somebody gets in there and if they start making bucks, their rent goes up. They can afford a little extra.
What's the square footage?
Tiny home size. I don't know the square footage. Doug already stepped out too, but they are small. 1 bedroom and small 2 bedrooms, no attached garages, no community space, no courtyard. They do have an in-unit washer and dryer. They are maybe the size of the current elder apartments. If you've ever been in the elder apartments, they're about that size.
So the 2 bedrooms are 952 square feet, and the 1 bedroom 756 for the Giiwedan.
Yeah, they're efficient. They are meant to be affordable and efficient because we're talking about still low-income people. We're not talking about, you know, whatever. We're not trying to match the market. We're trying to make housing affordable. And these units, you have to pay your water and sewer, it's not included in your rent. So you have to pay the $71 on top of that, plus your electric, gas, plus your whatever other expenses you have, your cell phone and
This
blah,
may
blah,
be
blah.
a silly question, but I'm gonna ask it. So, so like when you look at the ending budget balance, does that, like, the ending number at the end of whatever month, does it all go into one pot? No matter if it's Giiwedan or Elder, are they separate budget accounts? Okay, okay, then never mind.
So are we gonna leave this meeting tonight knowing what the rents are gonna be?
I think we're just looking for feedback right now so that we can continue to refine. I think we're just looking for common theme and any other consensus or any other super conflicting things so that we can follow up. Like, sounds like the pet thing is still in the air.
So is there gonna be a point in time where we're gonna have a resolution on that and we'll know what those rents are gonna be?
So those will come forward with the property agreement form. So the property agreement is gonna be on your agenda probably within the next month and is gonna be on the council agenda within the next month.
So we will know by the end of next month.
I hope way before that.
At the end of August.
I hope at the beginning of.
Probably next week, we'll address it at our regular board.
Well, the reason I say that is there's so much not knowing what the hell's going on. And you don't even, if I went home tonight, because my wife knows that we're meeting on this stuff, and she's gonna ask me all these questions, and I'm not gonna be able to tell her anything, because I don't know about it. We heard a little bit about everything, even dogs, and we talked more about dogs than we did about the rent.
Yeah,
So,
we didn't even have that on the agenda, so.
So I guess if I had a date, haven't heard, Ben probably wants to know the same thing. There's a date that's gonna be by that, then you'll have to pay $700,
We all want the same thing, Larry, we do.
But let's put a date on it, and let's make it mandatory that we have a date and we're all gonna come together, and this is what it's gonna be.
Do you have any feedback on the rent or expenses?
Whatever it takes to get that bottom line.
Is there
We're
any?
gonna have another meeting, we're gonna have a meeting, let's after that,
If nobody's throwing out numbers, I'll throw some numbers out. Okay, I'm looking at numbers in the neighborhood on the 24 units up there. It looks like a $500 rent keeps us out of the negative for the most part.
The 0% management and less than a 5% management. And at this point, we haven't discussed the management fee and the whole purpose and intention behind it, because every other direct expense is covered in the budget. And so the management fee has always been questionable to us, like what's the purpose, what is the role, because it's not meant to be a for-profit operation. So yeah, the 0, 1, and the 5, less than 5% put us in the black.
Right, so I'm just throwing some numbers out because it doesn't sound like wants to throw a number out there, so I'm throwing some numbers out there. If we're doing a rent of $500 at the elderly unit, which includes the water, sewer, and so forth, fantastic, it is what it is. I don't know what people are paying today for rent in the area, but that's just a number I'm throwing out there as a topic. The second thing is the same thing on the other one, is we're looking at 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. 1 bedroom, similar to the elderly, a little less of amenities. I would be looking at the concept of $450 and $550, so between the gray and the pink, and that'll still give us into the aspects of a little bit of a profit on those units also. Raising them up a little bit because they're more open, the 1 and 2 units, to just about anybody. So those will be people that probably still have an income and working. That's why my numbers would be in the neighborhood of $450 and $550 for a 1 and 2 bedroom. There's some numbers with it all there. I'm gonna confuse everybody because that ain't on the sheet.
We can make it happen.
Good job.
Okay?
I'll have it before next week.
I'm just throwing some numbers on one person.
I'll give you all the numbers before next week.
So if we're looking for some numbers for some support. I'm one for both, right there, the numbers are going up.
Well, just a few things, you know, on our budget numbers, you know, those are flat rated out at, well, even, kind of even percentages, 5 and 10%, you know. That may land at 7% or something. We don't know exactly what that number is gonna be at, where it hits right. You just kind of gotta massage those budgets a little bit to find out that number. Maybe it's 4%, you know, we don't know if it's 8%. To just kind of narrow-sighted, just put even numbers on 5, 10, 15, no, the number was 12, really. So we gotta identify what that real number is.
I think what we're gonna do is just get this project out, this government, then we can, in the future, we can look at things, and if we have to adjust, then we adjust. But I think it's important that we get something finalized.
Maybe that's 472, you know, we're talking even numbers, but might be.
Any other feedback or discussion? If not, we'll move on to the next item. It's the property management agreement, essentially, the agreement between the tribe as the property owners and the housing authority as the property managers, the landlord, acting as the landlord.
That's up your alley. Are you speaking to this way?
Yeah. All right, speak on.
It sounds like if I can't move my family.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see some old friendly faces here. It's been a long time. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wade Williams, Assistant Tribal Attorney in the Redcliffe Legal Department. It's nice to see you guys on the housing side, and I look forward to working with you on helping get this property management agreement across the line. I know you've been working with Rick's staff. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight to talk through the agreement he's been working with you on. He had surgery today, so he's probably a little woozy still. Well, knowing Rick, he might. So I think you've been circulated a red line draft of the property agreement. Is that right? Property management agreement.
We didn't get the red line.
Not a red line? Okay, so you probably saw an initial draft. Okay. Rick asked me to take a look at it, and I've added some things to hopefully make it more workable and clear and readable. But basically, my understanding of the goals of the party is to create a property management agreement that achieves some basic goals. And one is that the project be self-sustaining financially. And you've talked about that quite a bit tonight about operational expenses and unplanned expenses. I think a lot of that can be resolved with, well, I mean, your budget and your rental income policies are to be worked out, but you can address a lot of the catastrophic type of expenses with insurance. And so, one of my recommended changes was that the housing authority be named as an additional insured on the tribe's property insurance policy and the commercial general liability policy, so that you would be treated as an insured along with the tribe if a property owner were to get injured and then sue the tribe. And so I think those kinds of catastrophic risks can be mitigated, as Nicole alluded to earlier very astutely, that can be taken care of with insurance. And the sovereign immunity piece, I don't want to say that's kind of a red herring, but it's important. It's important for tribal nations to preserve sovereign immunity as part of the overall sovereignty preservation picture. But really, it's a legal, like a card that you play when the tribe has been sued unfairly. And that's really the only time it ever gets played. If someone is abusing the tribe and dragging us into court for reasons that are just beyond the pale, we'll play that card. And well, at least we advise council to play that card. But otherwise, it's not something that, I don't like Nicole said, it's not we're trying to insulate the tribe from risks and shifting all the burden on you. The goals are the same, to make a project that works well for everybody. Did you want to?
I just had a question, because it just goes back to the ordinance on chapter 19 on the subsection 6, where we are waiving that sovereign immunity and we're consenting to a lawsuit, whereas the tribe has to consent to a lawsuit to be sued, depending on what resolutions, I guess, are in place, where there is sovereign waivers.
Yeah, on the tribe side, sovereign immunity waivers are a case-by-case basis, and they have to be consensual. And so, if a contractor wants to be able to sue the tribe in tribal court or state of Wisconsin or somewhere, and they want the tribe to waive that in a limited fashion in order to enter the agreement at all, otherwise they walk away, then the tribe can decide whether that's worth it or not, reasonable or not. A lot of people are unfamiliar with litigation in tribal communities, or they're unfamiliar with tribal law, and so they're uncomfortable moving forward without a limited waiver of sovereign immunity. They don't understand necessarily that the tribe only plays that card when it's been boxed in unclearly.
So for the housing authority under 19.6.2, it just says the council hereby gives its irrevocable consent to allowing the authority to sue and be sued in its corporate name upon any contract, claim, or obligation arising out of its activities under the ordinance, and hereby authorizes the authority to agree by contract to waive any immunity from suit which it might otherwise have.
Right, I read that as well as a case-by-case consensual agreement. So if you have a contractor who doesn't ask for a sovereign immunity waiver from you, you could play that card as well.
Okay.
But since I'm not your lawyer, I kind of, as a tribal attorney, we do help you guys out quite a bit, but you do have your own counsel, and so I'm kind of obligated to, recommend that you talk with your attorney about that. But that would be my reading of it. It's a case-by-case basis. It authorizes you to consent on a case-by-case basis.
And then that kind of goes into the agreement, because the indemnification is, we shall hold the tribe not liable for anything, but there's nothing in there but arbitration. And I think there should be something in there so we can talk with the council if the board and the council don't agree, that we have that conversation to work it out. And I didn't see any language regarding that.
Yeah, because there's no language in there, that just means the default rules apply, where if you guys have a disagreement with the council, or the council would disagree with you guys, you try and work it out. If you can't, then someone sues each other in tribal court, ask the judge to figure it out. But I don't foresee that happening. Everyone's on the same team here.
No, I agree, but it's all in writing, so we have to make sure that the risk is addressed and that we do have a meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
Because once we sign it, we're obligated to fulfilling that obligation.
Yeah. And as Larry mentioned earlier, getting something in place, I always like to say that no contract is perfect, and no legal code is perfect. They're always works in progress. They're not set in stone. I think the goal is to get an agreement that's workable and everybody understands and sees it as a reasonable description of what the parties are agreeing to. And if things aren't perfect, we can amend it later on. If things change, you can amend it later on. But the importance is that the relationship of the parties is healthy, and that's what really matters. This is just paper.
I think the relationship's healthy. I think, we respect our governing body and our owner, and we're trying to make sure that our business is run appropriately, and just pushing out some of this information, like the management fee, Lisa and I spent a lot of time discussing that the costs that are associated in this agreement and, what is the management fee? Do we need the management fee? The issues that we come across is on the IHBG funds, is we can only use that funding source to pay salaries on the 12 units. Right now, we don't have a working budget with capital for the work that we're doing on the other stuff. So that revenue and getting those units open is, it's super important at this point. We are doing work in that arena with the 12 units, so, you know, that's where our time is allocated to. However, I guess there's an urgency there, because that funding source is, we have to make sure we're following federal law.
Yeah.
Essentially with that. So
Yeah,
the
oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the management fee piece, you know, we agree that, we have payroll costs, included as expenses.
Okay, great, great.
So I think that the council and the board have to agree on if we're going to have a management fee, because the language in the contract, it's not gross income, it's based off of net income. So after all the expenses are paid, whatever is left, that fee is going to be given for whatever purpose. And then the language is a little bit ambiguous on the agreement between the tribe and the board. It gives us back the fee, or it takes away the fee, and then it gives it back to us. And then it also says if we can't agree, you don't get a fee at all. So that, I think that's the part we have to agree on if it's gross income or net income on that bottom line, and if where that money's going, if it's going to a capital expense account or a retained earnings account where we can create money, cash flow. Because if we're just pushing it into a capital expense plan, I would imagine the council would want a capital improvement plan, and where are we going to allocate that money? Or we have a retained earnings and we just let that grow into a dividend. I didn't want to go too deep into that because the CFO isn't here. I'm sure she probably has an opinion on that. So just from our perspective, that could be an option for the tribe.
Yeah, I think that's great that you ran through that. I noticed the ambiguity as well when I was looking at this. I was asked to look at this yesterday or the day before. And I think some of my suggested red lines address some of that, but I wasn't sure what the understanding of the parties was about how that was all going to work. Because this document is supposed to just reflect what the parties are agreeing to, and I wasn't sure where you guys stood with that on a management fee. I was envisioning the management fee as being a profit that you guys could use to support your operations however you want, or was it meant to cover some of your overhead like payroll?
Well,
so, go ahead.
Sorry, in the agreement, it is what the tribe decides to do with the money.
You mean the management fee?
It says excess revenue after meeting established operation reserve balance requirements and capital reserve requirements will be used as directed by the tribe to support project operations and needs or to fund the reserve account for capital improvements when needed and necessary. And then it goes into the annual may be entitled to retain a management fee up to 7% of the annual net revenue, which is gross revenue minus expenses, reserve contributions, and liabilities collected. The amount of annual management fees will be calculated at the end of the tribe's fiscal year, which would be the end of September, and our fiscal year ends December. So there's that, and then it said, goes into the absent of agreement of the parties, no management fee will be paid. The tribe has the right to withdraw funds from the project as reasonably needed, but the tribe agrees not to withdraw funds. So it's giving it to us and then taking it back.
Yeah.
And then it says from the account supporting the RCCH project without reasonable prior notice. So you guys are going to give us notice if you need to take the funds or you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a little ambiguity in that area.
Agreed. I agree. We should work through that. How do the parties feel about the idea of an annual meeting where you review a proposed budget, and that would include all the operational expenses, reconciliation, capital expenditure plans, where you're at with retained earnings, and then decide on a potential management fee and a distribution back to the tribe. That's kind of what I was seeing as a way of working it out every year, because it's probably going to fluctuate from year by year.
I agree with that, Wade. That should probably be a topic that's always added on the annual, that, you know, it's clearly stated that, the housing board and the council has to meet once a year annually.
Yeah.
And that topic should be on that.
Yeah, that seems like a good time.
Take a review of that. But I'm also with the understanding that tonight's meeting is serving as this year's annual meeting? No? We're still gonna have one in the fall, it usually is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very well.
This is just to talk
Yeah,
about.
just to talk this, yep.
Yeah, that flexibility seems appropriate to me, given the relationship, so.
The feedback that the management fee is sort of fulfilling the indirect services gap is, I guess, helpful, because everything else is a direct expense.
It's so on the 12 units, we can allocate IHBG funds because it's allowable costs. Anything we do outside of that, if it's not allowable, we're gonna have to pay back if we get audited on that. So that's where we're walking the fine line. We wanna make sure that if we're doing those 12 units and we're expending IHBG funds on it to pay salaries, that's what we're working on. Now, this other budget, the urgency is that we need the applicants in these units as soon as possible, because we need that revenue to support our staff that are working on that.
Yep. Yeah. You know.
Or scrimmage. I ain't gonna be on the team next week.
Any other things you wanted to point out? Is anyone unclear or has like burning ideas or questions or thoughts that they just feel like are not being addressed or pending as the housing authority takes on the potential landlordship, including all the other things you guys do for your 220 units in terms of leasing them, maintaining them, all of the policy enforcement, lease enforcement, and that the tribe is the partner.
I think it was a,
Once they're building these two projects, that they were going to become one of the management housing. I always thought that would be the case.
Yeah.
Then at one point in time, there was thought that it wasn't gonna happen.
I know.
That I thought this was always gonna be a project for the housing to manage. Earlier in the year, when they first started planning this, it sounded to me like it was gonna be something that the housing was gonna, not the housing, but the tribal is going to get a management team to come in and take care of that. So I'm kind of glad to see it into the housing.
We love our housing authority, Larry. You guys are already managing 220 units. You're the best landlord on the rest.
yes, we agree. We also come at a reasonable rate compared to what a management team would charge you for it. But, I guess.
For $90,000, somebody might be willing to manage
They,
a 16-unit apartment building.
I thought tonight's meeting was productive. You know, we got some, things cleared up in terms of where we're going with the rent calcs, and we just gotta iron out the final number, that, percentage on whether or not we're gonna have a management fee or not, and a few, contractual property management, cleanups. But I thought it was productive. But I'm leaning on the side of Larry. The sooner we have that number and that's communicated out to our communities, they can start planning with a identified occupancy date. You know, so people like to have a forewarning when it comes to big moves.
Also, if we could put together a date that potential tenants could go in and take a look around.
Yeah, definitely. I think that get some promotional materials. We have some photos already, but we can get some video and, things like that available. We,
And invite Channel 6 down, but make sure we have the black top down first before we cut any ribbon.
we will get the road paved up. I know Heather left, but she's waiting on that too. Another deer. Better guess.
Chairman Boyd, we do have one more comment.
So I'm trying to do this. So I have a question about on page 1, the management duties of RCCHA. So at the bottom where it says, for example, the tenant selection and waiting list policy, the RCCHA shall select tenants from a wait list developed in accordance with current policy directives provided by the tribe. What does that mean?
Section 3, bottom of the very first paragraph in section 3.
I think the clarification is whether or not, are there other eligibility criteria that we are mutually agreeing on? Like the pet policy, or the income, or other, non-tribal, things, which we've all agreed we're gonna watch to see who the wait list is and watch to see where the need is before we expand to that area. So I think that's what it is in reference to. But right now, we're not asking, or we haven't talked about anything outside of what we're already mentioning.
I don't know. Okay. So, but we're still going off like our wait list, our selection, yeah. So, okay.
Yep. I mean, that was agreed to a long time ago.
Okay.
We asked you guys to advertise for them because we need to get the word out.
Okay, yeah, because I already have, like, this tenant selection started based on, because I'm like, there's a lot of work there. Don't want to go backwards. Okay, thank you.
Any other closing thoughts from anyone? If not, we'll get back.
I got a quick one. I want to thank everyone too for all the good information. If you look at this, we talked about liabilities, needs, reports, rental concepts, our risk, looking at this management agreement. I hope to see another date where we can give our community some good information on occupancy, but we got some bugs to flesh out here yet. And I thank you though.
I want to say thank you to Chairwoman Boyd for supporting the Housing Authority and helping us look at the data in a good way to support the community. And I think the board sees the same vision that you do for affordability. So I think that moving forward, if we're in alignment with our policies and we can hit that number that's acceptable for affordability, we can move forward.
Yeah, we're in the office next week, and I'm pestering these guys all the time. So just know that it is urgent. It is urgent to us to get this done and make a decision and take action and fill the units the day that they're ready for moving.
Just one more thing before we all leave here. I've been sitting here listening to everyone's thoughts and opinions, and they're all good, and I agree with everything everyone is saying. And what I'm coming away with is that our housing and occupancy challenges are very complicated, right? Like we have unpaid rent, that's a challenge with a lot of our occupants out there in the tribe. And so how do we even address that? Sure, it's simple to say, if you don't pay, you get evicted. But then what does that number look like? And then what is that gonna look like on the streets of our home here? Nobody wants to see that. So those challenges are very complicated. And it's when we come together like this and we put all those things out there and we're trying to come up with the best solutions that are gonna benefit the most people. Sure, there are going to be some tough decisions, but I think this was I agree with Chris Boyd over here that this was a very productive meeting. And maybe it's not anything that we're seeing currently on our paper, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But this is how we get to that number, and I want to thank everyone for coming in tonight. Great.
Any other closing discussion? If not, we need motion to adjourn on our end.
So moved.
Second. All right, Shania, Chagawikwe. All those in favor, please say aye.
I'll second.
Motion carries 7:05.
All in favor?
All right.
Keep up, man.